Hi guys, in this video I'm going to go over your VBA resume. So if you're looking for a job uh, in VBA, you want to be a VBA programmer and get into that industry, I'm just going to go over what I think a good resume would look like, some of the things I think you should have on it, as well as some questions and some tips for when you interview. The first thing though is a reminder to go to excelvbasequel.com. I'm putting up videos all the time. Right now there's 5 hours and 36 minutes of free video lessons. You could come here and you could scroll down and you could watch all these lessons. They're all free. And it's a lot of good material. Actually, this video about the resume comes from someone who was watching the video on here and wanted me to go over, what should the resume look like and things like that. Okay, so excelvbasequel.com. Remember that. If you have questions, contact me here. Okay, so let's talk about your VBA resume. So I have an example resume here. It's a Word document, and before we get into the VBA stuff, let's just talk about the general framework of a resume. It's critical that if you're going to apply for a job, that you have a good-looking resume. If you submit a resume that isn't structured well and doesn't have good information on it, or anything's inconsistent or there's errors, then you're not going to get the job. So I think this general framework works, and if you want to use it, go ahead. So let's start by taking a look at it. So in the upper left corner, you have your name, and you put your street address and your city and state and zip code and your phone number and your email. Pretty simple. Okay. Then over here you put your name again in bigger font and things like that. And then generally you break it up. How I think it's good is that if you have work history, and use these sort of lines to divide your segments of your resume. So in the first segment on top you have your work history. So here's my work history with this company, ABC Financial, that's located in New York, and here's the date that I am employed there, and this is just dummy data, so I just made all this stuff up. And then XY Consulting, this is a different company that you could have worked for. So you could have multiple companies here. If you worked for 10 companies, I wouldn't say put all 10 on your resume, because you really want to keep your resume brief. 1 page is really good. Here's the second company, right? XY Consulting, New York, New York, and the dates that you worked there. Okay, so put the company, the city that it's in, and the dates you worked there. And then what you do below, I would put your position title. Okay, so here's your position title, and then below that you use bullet points to put what you did in that position. So I think that's huge. If you write paragraphs, it's not a good resume, because people don't like to read paragraphs. They have short attention spans. They want you to be very to the point. So use bullet points and keep it brief. Don't write over 2 or 3 sentences for a bullet point. In general, try to keep the bullet point just 1 or 2 sentences. Okay, and so we'll go over all these bullet points in a second, but then I'm just going to scroll down a little bit, and then I use a separator line. I think it looks good if you use the separator line here, and then you put your education and you title it education, right? So you have different segments. And then University of New York, so that's where you went to school, and here's the dates that you went to school, and here's the degree you got, a BS in finance or a BS in computer science or engineering, and your GPA. Then you could put in bullets, you could put all kinds of things that you were associated with when you were in university. So if you were a member of some association, or if you participated in research, you could go on. And if you wanted, you could do a sub bullet here, like worked with Professor of Finance on project. So I would say use bullet points, and when you want to explain those bullet points, use a sub bullet point. Okay, but only do it to a certain extent. Don't keep putting multiple bullet points like this. I think that would look ridiculous. So use bullet points, but not too much. I would say only go to this level where you have two a bullet point and a sub bullet point. Okay, and then you have another line here, and you could just put some computer experience. So I just put that in there, so that in general people know like you're a tech savvy person. You can do a whole bunch of different stuff, and you're not afraid of computers and doing things like that. Okay. So, okay, let's talk about these bullet points up here under VBA Programmer. The first one, let's look at this one. Okay, it says understand and analyze automation opportunities and provide VBA solutions which are unambiguous, testable, and verifiable using various components of the Excel and Outlook object model. Now that's a pretty long sentence, but I think that general statement is a good statement, because it says here that there are automation opportunities and you understand them and you analyze them and then you provide VBA solutions. You could probably take out this unambiguous, testable, and verifiable part and just say using various components of the Excel object model and Outlook object model. So right here, I would say these are the key points you want to state: that you can understand and analyze automation opportunities, because the person interviewing you wants to know that you're a creative person and that you can recognize when things can be automated. That's one key of this bullet point. And the other key is that you can use various components of the Excel and Outlook object model. So in all the videos on excelvbasql.com, we teach you how to use the Excel object model to build macros and do cool stuff and automate everything. And that's using Excel, though. The Outlook object model is used when you want to send emails. So if you're in Excel and you want to automate an email, you could do that. There are other different object models. You could do Word here. You could put Word if you're a Word VBA guy. So you could put Excel, Word, and Outlook object model. So you could do that, but you got to know, when you walk into the interview, know what you're applying for. If they only want Excel automation, then Excel object model is good enough. But if at the same time, if you can do everything, then put everything down. Do Excel object model, Word object model, Outlook object model, do everything. But I'm trying to say that object model is important, because if someone's going to hire you, they absolutely know about the object model and in general how VBA works. You're working with objects, and so that's a huge interview question, and you want to have that on your resumes, that you can use the Excel object model, because it puts you a step ahead of other people who might not understand it, and we'll get into that later on in this video. So the next bullet point, it says integrate advanced Excel formulas and VBA techniques to manipulate spreadsheets. But in parentheses, it has a whole bunch of these advanced Excel formulas and VBA techniques. So in parentheses, you can see here I just put HLOOKUPs, VLOOKUPs, index, offset match, array formulas. Okay, so that highlighted portion is the advanced Excel formulas. Okay, and this highlighted portion here, loops and arrays, is the advanced VBA techniques. Okay, so a person interviewing you, they want to know that you're an expert in Excel. So it's good to just throw these down there, HLOOKUPs, VLOOKUPs, index, because they are kind of advanced techniques in Excel. They're not difficult, but they're advanced. Some people don't do them. And these loops, arrays show them that you can handle VBA techniques that are absolutely necessary, right? So it's good to have this in a bullet point. Okay, so build dynamic pivot tables and charts using VBA. So this is something that I don't have a video up on excelvbasql.com, but I probably will put a video up. And when you use VBA, you can automate, building charts and building pivot tables. And if you can do that, if you know how to do that, put it down there. If you don't put it down. Once again, don't lie on your resume, because if you put something down that you can't do and you get caught on it, you're not going to get the job. Okay, next bullet point. Build many user-defined functions, add-ins, and Gooeys for various work groups to automate tasks. So this is a good bullet point, because it says that you can do a lot. You can build functions that are user-defined, that there's a special requirement for this function and you can build it. Add-ins are huge. So I went over this on the website, user-defined functions, so you can watch that. I'm going to put a video on add-ins up sometime. And Gooeys, I went over that, which is basically a form, a graphical user interface. That's what Gooey stands for. So I put up videos on user-defined functions and Gooeys, and so you should know how to do that. The add-ins, I didn't put up a video yet, but I will. And so it's good to let the interviewer know that you can do all this stuff. Integrate error handling to log errors and notify users. So this is something, once again, I plan on putting a video up on the website soon. Okay, and same for this one here. Use VBA to import data from text files, CSV files, and SQL Server data sources. So this is really a huge one here, I would say. People see that on your resume, that you can manipulate files, that you can pull in data from various sources. That's gonna make you stand out, because a lot of people can write a macro, but can you integrate it with 5 different types of data sources, like a .txt file, CSV file, or pull it in from a SQL Server data source, or export it from a SQL Server data source, things like that. So all these, I'll be putting a lot of videos up on how to do all this stuff. So hopefully I can get you to this point where you can basically take this template and just put it on your resume. And then this last one here, build VBA functionality to send emails automatically using the Outlook object model. So here is what I was saying before. You have an Excel object model, which is basically everything I highlighted up here. Okay, this is all Excel object model. And then if you want to send an email automatically, you use the Outlook object model, and that's why in this first bullet point I put that up here. Okay, so if you know how to do that, put this down. If you don't, go Google it, or I'll put up a video and learn it, and that'll definitely make your resume stand out. There's a lot of things on here that interviewers will like. The fact that you can integrate to data sources, this is huge. The fact that you can build add-ins and use Gooeys and user-defined functions, pivot tables and charts. These two are huge. If you could send emails, they're all positive, very positive things that if you put on your resume, it's going to look good. Okay, so that's basically the bullet points and then the structure of the resume that I think is good. I think it works. It's clean. Once again, make your resume clean and don't clutter it up. Make sure it has spacing, and notice that there are titles here to each part of the resume, like work history and education. I think that's good, so it gives more structure to the resume. And again, let me just state something about putting other jobs down here. So if you had 10 jobs in your past, you don't need to put all 10 of them down there. Try to keep it to 1 page. Try to keep it to 2 or 3, 4 jobs max, I would say. And do your best to put these bullet points in. And I would say that you do not just want to take these bullet points and submit your resume. You want to actually describe some things. So if you down here, I would describe other things, like work with XYZ department to blah blah blah, right? You just write you write some more stuff. So your bullet points have to really tell the company what you do. So write more of them, not just everything about VBA. Write some more bullet points about projects you worked on and how you succeeded at those projects, and how you came up with creative solutions that save time. So you want to be specific. Like here, I could put like created VBA, or created financial model to forecast costs, which somehow, I'm just writing anything here, which saved $40 million. Okay, I don't know what you do for a living, but you want to be specific and you want to highlight successes and achievements that you've had at your career. Okay, so really make your resume stand out. Be specific. You know, put 40 million if you save 40 million. If you worked with, you know, here's another thing that's key. You know, let's see, built. Let's see. Costing model to analyze, you know, 60,000 combinations of products, you know, products sources or something. I don't know. I mean, all I want to highlight here is that in my bullet points, I'm putting numbers in, right? I'm saying 60,000 combinations or $40 million, because when someone looks at it, they want to have concrete knowledge of what you did and what you worked with. So if you did something for $40 million, put it down there. If you worked with large data sets, like 60,000 rows of data, or a million rows of data, make sure you put that in there, because they want, you know, the more it looks like you can deal with larger complex problems and you could offer good achievements and good successes to those, good resolutions to those problems, then you're probably going to get the job. So be specific. If you work with large data sets like a million rows or 50,000 rows, 100,000 rows, or 5,000 workbooks, and you're opening up 5,000 workbooks, you know, put that on your resume. Or if you save $40 million, you probably are going to get a real good job, I would say. Okay, so the other thing about when you use other jobs down here, make sure you use the right tense. Okay, so this is the past, right? So here I'm working at this company, ABC Financial, from 9/2005 to the present. So I should use the present tense. All my verbs here are present tense. Actually, this should be create. That's a good error. So this should be present tense. I'll put build and maintain this model. So all these things here, all these bullet points should be present tense, okay, because you're working there now. Everything here should be in the past tense, all the verbs you use. So worked, right? So I worked in with various groups. If you use present tense down here, it's going to look very bad, because this is not present. You did that in the past. Okay, so let's look at something else. So that's all I want to cover on the bullet points. You know, you can download this file from Excel VBA SQL, and you can just basically take it and use it in your resume, and then the structure of the whole resume. And I definitely think it works. Use the bullet points and put the leave the dividers in. It's a good structure. Okay, so now on to the interview. So you have this resume, you put the bullet points, you make it look like this. It's a nice structure. You submit it for a job, and you get an interview. Okay, so now you come to a VBA interview where they want you to be a VBA programmer. Okay, so here are some tips and questions. Now this is not a comprehensive list. I'm not saying that you're going to be prepared absolutely and get every job, but it's a start, right? Okay, so the first tip right here is to bring your computer and share some of your VBA work. Okay, so you walk in the door and he asks you a bunch of questions. You sit down and he interviews you for 20 minutes. If he doesn't say anything like, did you bring your computer? Can you show me what you've done in VBA? Before you leave, if you want the job, ask him, is it possible for you to share some of your VBA work? Tell him that, I enjoyed interviewing you. I also brought my computer to show you some of my VBA work and to show you what I can do. And hopefully he says yes, because that's a real good indication to him that you're someone who enjoys VBA and coding and programming and wants a job. So if you ask him, can I show you some of my VBA work? I brought my computer. He's probably going to say yes, and then I think you're going to get the job if your programs work. Okay, so that's number one, is that bring your computer and ask to share your VBA work. Absolutely. Don't be afraid. Don't think that, you just started VBA programming 2 months ago. Don't think that you're not good enough at VBA. It's not difficult, right? Like that's what I said a lot during the videos, is that none of VBA is difficult. So don't ever feel like I'm not a good enough programmer. I don't have a complex enough code, so I can't really show it off because it doesn't do like some very complicated thing, right? If you watch all the videos on Excel, VBASQL.com, and you just do those sorts of things and understand those macros, you can just bring that to the interview and just walk through those macros and say, okay, here's what this does, here's what this does, here's what this does, and that would be good enough, because he would see there that you understand a lot about VBA. Okay, moving on to the next question. So if he asks, what is the VBA object model? Well, I would say go watch the video on Excel VBASQL.com. But I'm not going to go watch it, go over it here too much, but basically VBA is dealing with objects, right? And what are objects? So this might be a follow-up question. What are objects? So these should be basic questions to you if you're applying for a VBA programmer job. Because objects are what? They're instances of classes. And what is a class? A class is just a blueprint, right? And a class has properties and methods. So property can be like, say if you had a class for a dog, just a blueprint for a dog. You could have a property that is color. What's the color of the dog? That's a property. Then you could have a method in that class that would be bark, and that method would cause the dog to bark, right? So that's object model, and I would really say go watch the video on Excel VBA SQL, because it goes through the object model in the environment. You can clearly see what's happening. You have a class that has properties and functions, and in the VBA Object Explorer you can see all those properties and functions, and you could see how some of those properties are itself an instance of another class. So that's what the object model is. It's just classes that make an object, and those objects might be used in other classes. Okay? And that's all it is. If you want to say it in a couple sentences, if he asks what is the object model, you can say the object model is the framework in VBA that defines an object using classes, and also can use those objects in other classes. So you could say something like that. So that's how I would answer that question. And if he wants to go further, you could say, the objects and classes in VBA are in the Object Explorer, which is in the environment, and you could tell him this. You could say, you can go into the Object Explorer and you could look at all the classes and objects, or all the objects, and which will have classes associated with them. But again, that's in this video, right? There's a video about that, so go watch that. So here, if he asks, describe some of your experience with VBA, well, you can answer, how you started, right? He would want to know how you started with VBA. So some of your first work, things like that. That's a basic question. He just wants to get the feeling for, where are you coming from with VBA? Are you an expert who's been programming for 10 years, or are you a student or just started? It doesn't matter. Like, don't be afraid that if you started with VBA 2 months ago that it's going to look bad. It's not, because he knows that it's not hard and it's something you can do. Okay, so here's a question. Describe how you would use a dynamic array to store data. Okay, so once again, I refer you to the video on Excel VBASQL.com, but in general, let me go back here, and I'm just going to put classes, exclamation. Know what they are, okay? And here about the dynamic array, I'm going to put redim. right? Because when you have a dynamic array, if you watch the video, every time you loop through and you're dealing with an element in that array, and let's say when he says you want to store data in a dynamic array, so let's say you have a column in Excel and it has 10 rows with data in it, and you want to put that in a dynamic array. Well, every time you loop through the row, you have to redimension the array. So that's really what I'm trying to ask here, is that how would you use a dynamic array to store data? Well, you could say, if I had a column with 10 rows of data in it and I want to put it in a dynamic array, I would create a loop to loop through the first row to the last row, and I could do that by doing dot value is blank to go through from top to bottom. And every time I put an entry in the array, I then want to make the array bigger and redimension it, so that if I have to put a value in, another value in, it will be big enough to hold that data. Okay, so that's the main thing here, is redimension. Okay, so watch the video, but the concept here is you need to make the array bigger, and you do that by doing this redimension process, and that's in the video. Okay, describe your general approach when writing code in VBA. Answer, you analyze the automation opportunity, then you create a general coding structure. Then you build your modules and begin coding. Something generic like this. I think I would accept here, because it shows that, okay, my general approach is to analyze this opportunity for automation and then create a general coding structure. Now here, create a general coding structure. What do I mean by that? I mean, think about it, right? I mean, if you have this problem, you got to think about how you're going to solve it. So when he asks you this, you could say, I created a general coding structure, and I in general think about what functions I need, what subroutines I need, and anything else I may need to build this application. And then here you build the modules and begin coding. So the important thing here is you build the modules how do I say it, like compartmentalize. So you build these modules, right? But remember what I said throughout the videos on the website, is that you want to separate your modules so that it's easy to understand your code. And that's what this question is really going for, because if you just say, I just write a sub, I just write sub and then the name of my subroutine, and I write all my code, and then I do end sub. If you say that to this question, I don't think you're going to get the job, because what they want to hear is that you analyze the situation and then you see what goes into the problem. You might have 5 different functions and 2 other subroutines, and lots of logic that might need to go into a problem. And they want to see that you compartmentalize your module. So that means you might have 5 or 10 modules to use for when you write your code, and that's what this question is getting at, is do you just write one? Do you write one subroutine, or do you write many? And the answer should be, I write many, because if you have one subroutine that has 15,000 lines of code, it's really hard to understand what's going on. So you should try to remember in your interview that you want to break up your code into different modules, okay? And use functions to make your code concise and shorter. What data sources are you comfortable using when programming in VBA? Okay, so data sources, right? So when you work in VBA and Excel, you get your data from Excel data. So you could say Excel data. You could say .csv files, .txt files, and SQL Server databases. Now I'm going to put up some videos on these three here soon. But if you don't know how to do it, it's fine. I mean, this isn't huge. You could Google this stuff, how to import from all this stuff, and you'll find out, okay? But they want to know that you can use other stuff. So, if I don't put up the video and if you don't see it, go to Google and Google, import CSV, import TXT, and they'll have macros there, and try to understand them and take them to the interview, and create a little macro that will import this text file or import the CSV file. The SQL Server database, if you're not familiar with that, don't really worry about that. I'll put up a video on that. It's tricky, and that's about it. Okay, so this question: how would you make a macro run at 3 a.m. in the morning before you come in to work? So this question is saying, how good are you at automation? Because a lot of people can write a macro and they could automate some person's task and it'll work great. But they still have to be there in the office while that's happening. Okay, so this question is sort of saying, are you an expert at automation? I mean, can you make it work while you're sleeping? And the answer to this is yes, you can make it work while you're sleeping, as long as your computer's on. So you could say, I would use the Microsoft scheduler. Again, I'm going to put up a video on this, on how to do this, so that you can run macros at 3 a.m. when you're not in the office, when you're actually sleeping. If the person doesn't ask you this in the interview, I would bring it up, because it's a huge winner for you. If you can say, I can build macros, but also I can automate them so that they can run at 5 a.m. So before anyone gets into work, all our reporting is done. If you can say that, they're going to like that, and you're going to get the job, I think, because that's sort of an advanced sort of thing to do. And this here, this thing is not very hard to do. It takes less than 5 minutes to set something like that up, and I'll show you how to do it in a video. But if you want to know how to do it, just go ahead and Google it. But I'll put up a video. And another question, this is sort of a basic question, what is option explicit? And this is the text that is placed at the top of the module to require all variables be declared. To require that all variables be declared. So remember this. Remember, there's a video on the website. There's a video on the website about variables, and if you watch that, it goes over option explicit. It's not a hard concept to understand. Basically, if you put option explicit at the top of your module, it requires that all your variables be declared, so that your memory is sort of optimized, so that you don't have everything being declared variant. So that's another question they might ask, is what happens if you do not use option explicit? And the answer So if they ask what happens if you don't use option explicit, the answer is that all variables are declared variant. And what does that mean? So it just keeps going, right? A little bit. I mean, answer variant uses, so variant data type, the variant data type uses a large amount of memory. So if all objects are declared variants, then unnecessary memory is used. So basically, if you don't use option explicit, everything is declared variant. Variant uses the largest amount of memory for any variable. And so if all your variables are variant, then I'm sure then you're using the maximum amount of memory for all your variables. And that's not good. You want to sort of make your memory as small as possible so that it runs faster, so that you don't take up more memory on your computer. So if you have other processes running, it doesn't slow those down, right? So this is sort of a good question because it shows that you understand what is option explicit, and then it shows that you understand variables and what are variables. You know, they're places in memory, and the memory takes up space. And depending on how you declare your variable, you have less space or you have more space that is taken away from your computer and cannot be used by other processes. So if you declare everything variant, you have a lot of space that is taken away from your memory that can be used by other processes. Okay. So once again, I hope you take a look at this resume. I'm going to save this. So once again, you know, you can download this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to upload that resume to excelvbasequel.com, and you're going to see it. You know, I'll put another lesson 15. I'll put resume down here, and you can download it. Look for the resume lesson, and you could download it on excelvbasequel.com. Okay. Once again, go here to watch the videos and learn how to do all this stuff. Again, I think it is beneficial to you to sort of use this format. You might have a format that works for you, and if you do, then don't. But if you're sort of wondering, is my resume good? Does it look good? Then I would say you're not absolutely confident. And one thing is that you have to be confident about your presentation, and it has to look good. It has to be structured good. So I would say download this and make changes, or you know, just leverage it. And good luck on all your job interviews. And if you have questions, again, contact me, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Thanks.